Product Evangelist here at Modyo, and in this session, I will show you how to create widgets using the Widget Builder. Just go to your website and make sure that you select Channels. Once there, go to New App and click. Type the name of your new application, in this case, Widget Builder, and click on Create. Now let's go to Pages, and let me show you how we in Modyo handle the widgets. Here in Home, you can find that we have one block. In this block, if you click it, you can find that it's made using HTML. Click on full screen and you can see that everything is just plain HTML using CSS classes. So this is the basic form of a widget. But what happens if you need to create something like this? Let me show you using the preview tool, something like this. In this case, this is the widget. But what happens if you need to create something more usable, something that you can reuse on different pages? So in this session, I will show you how to create one widget, how to reuse it, and how to include information, in this case, variables, to reuse this information on different pages. So let's get started. Here in this page, as you may notice, we're using one block, and let's go back to create a new widget. Here we have the pages and go to widgets. So let's create the first widget. Click on new widget and let's name it as header. So in this case, we're going to create one block that will be the header of different pages. So as you may notice, now we have three different sections, one for JavaScript, one for CSS, and one for HTML. In the previous scenario that I show you, we had one block that just displays HTML, plain HTML. So what happens if we need to use something more complex? We can use a block that includes CSS and JavaScript. We can use something already made for us. Just go to app, click here, and here we have one example using the dynamic framework. That is a framework that was created by Modyo, and it's basically made to help you develop faster your applications. So click here on Get Started with Dynamic, and as you may notice, we have different examples. For this session, we will use the blocks. Click here and go to Hero. And here we have different examples to use on your different websites. So let's choose this one. And to use it, just click on Source and click on Copy Code. Okay, now that we copy this code, go to Widgets and make sure that you select the HTML block. And here you can copy your code. Click on Save. And that's basically it. So to use it on your site, you need to click on Publish. And once the widget is published, we can go to Pages. And let's create one new page. Make sure that you select the widget page and call it Branches, for example. Click on Create. Now we have a new element here. As you may notice, we have one custom widgets section, and now we can select the header that we just created. Click here, and now we can use this element into our page. Let's save it, and I will close those elements here to make sure that we can easily watch. And here, click on preview so we can have a preview of the current version of our page. Okay, now we have the block that we just imported from the dynamic framework. Currently, this is a block that is using only HTML, but let's take it to the next step. And in this case, I will show you how to include one map. So let's go to widgets. And before we continue, let me mention that we have the code that we're using on this session on github.com/modyo-community/widget builder basics. Here you can find all the code that we use on this example. So now that we know that, let's click on new widget and let's call it branches. And in this widget, I want to display the location of every single branch I have on my organization. So let's start with the HTML. I already have some code that I will reuse from the repository. Let me copy this. So make sure that you're selecting the HTML and paste that. Okay, click on save. Now, this is the basic structure we need to start working on this map. So once we have the map, or at least the structure, the HTML structure, make sure that here in the line 5, we have a div with the ID map. And we will use this to embed the Google map. So let's go to JavaScript, click here. Make sure that you select the JavaScript option. So in this case, I will use one code based on this example. Here you can have the URL. It's located on developers.google.com/maps documentation. Here we can have one JavaScript example on how to create this map and how to include one marker here on the map. So basically, we're using the same script, and you will have this available on the repository. And I will explain what I'm doing here just by copying and pasting information. So in this line of code, what we're doing is to invoke the JavaScript file and include it into our HTML file. So once we have it, we're using a callback that will call the init app function. So let me include this init app function along with a couple of variables. So here's the init app function. And I also included a couple of variables, one to use the map. This where our map will live, and the other one is the position. That are the coordinates for our map. So once we are inside the init app function, what we're doing is that we're initializing the main objects, the map and the marker. Then we create the map with the coordinates here. And once we have the location and the zoom defined, we include the marker. That's a pretty basic script. And make sure that, as you may notice here on line 17, we're using the ID called map. So make sure that, as I mentioned, you have this ID with the same, this div with the same ID. Okay? Otherwise, you may have some errors on your code. And the last part is to publish this, just to make sure that we have everything we need. Let's publish this. And let's go to pages. And here on pages, search for branches. And we can include the branches widget that we just created. Save and see how it works on our page. So we have a couple of issues here. Right now we have the main block that we already created. And here we have the map but currently it's not displaying anything. So the problem here is that we need to include a couple of custom CSS on our widget. And let me show you how to edit this. We have two ways to modify one widget that is already created. First is just select the widget and click here on Edit Widget. And the other option is just go to Widgets and select the widget that you want to modify. In both cases, you will end here modifying the code. So let's include a couple of CSS elements. Basically, we need one crucial element to display the map. We need this line to display this map, and also we can include and we can customize elements. For example, right now we have this text branch, and what happens if, for example, I want to include an icon related with this title. So I will include a couple of extra lines for this title here, just to show you that we can include not only the dynamic framework CSS, but also we can use the custom CSS we have on widgets to fine-tune everything that we have on this specific widget. Okay, now we're ready, so we can publish. And if you publish, you will notice that everything that you modify here, for example, here we're modifying the CSS file. You may notice that we have changes, and it's pretty easy to detect what changed on your code. So it's easy to detect possible errors or things that you may not want to publish. So now everything is published, and there's a couple of things I want to show you. So let's go here and check the preview. Now we have the map functioning and the custom CSS. And what happens if we want to show something more custom? So let's go to another step. Let's include now variables, a way to reuse those widgets without modifying the code. So let's go back to the widgets. And in this case, I will include variables using the liquid language. So let's start with header. And in this case, let's click on Edit Widget. And I will show you how to include one basic variable using the liquid language. So in this case, let's pretend that we want to include something like unlock financial freedom with dynamic bank in, and let's name the city that we want to show. So for example, here we are on the widget, and let's go to variables and include a new variable. We can include the name city. That will be the name of the variable. And we can add a default value. So let's include this name as Santiago, Chile. Save it. It's important to include a default value, especially if you already have deployed these widgets, because otherwise you may have issues, you may have errors because you're calling a variable with no values. So you may have undesired results. So it's important to always include a default value like we're doing right now. So in this case, if I save it and publish, if we go back to this website, you may see no changes, and that's because we didn't include the information into the HTML. So now that we have the variable, let's go to HTML and include this variable on line 8, in my case, unlock financial freedom with dynamic bank in, and call the name of the city using the copy button and just paste. Now we have the name of the city. And since we are already here on the Widget Builder, let's go back and select the branches. And we can also include variables on this widget. In this case, we have something more complex because we want to modify the script of this JavaScript. So the good part is that the liquid variables work not only on HTML, but on JavaScript and CSS. So we can include these variables on any language we want. This is because liquid is rendered on server. So before the user have the final result, the variables will be rendered on Modyo's server and then will be displayed as a static code for the final user. So now let's go to the HTML and let's modify this line 3. And I want to include, instead of just branch, let's include the name. So once again, include city and the value, in this case, Santiago, Chile. Save it and repeat the process here. Just copy the name. Let's save it and go to JavaScript. And here in JavaScript, we need to modify the location of this map. So let's modify those values, and I can include the latitude, and I already have these values here. So just give me 1 second. Yeah. I will include the default values just to make sure that my map will keep working as usual. So let's save the latitude. Let's include the name, the full name, latitude, and save it. And longitude, and include the default value for, in this case, Santiago, Chile. Okay, now we have default values to make sure that everything will work as expected. And now we can just replace them using the proper value. So in this case, on latitude, let's copy latitude and modify the static value we have with the dynamic value. Same happens with longitude. Save it. And now we have the basic information. You may have this error here because we're including a different language, and in this case we're validating that it's on JavaScript, and since we're mixing JavaScript and liquid, you may have an error display. It's okay. It's working as expected. So now we have the information with the latitude and longitude, and seems like we have all the information we need. Let's publish this. So now we can use the widgets, and in this case, we're also updating information from the header. So we can click here and publish everything. And let's see how it works. Right now, if I refresh, you can see that we have now the default information displaying here on Santiago, Chile. Here we have the text on the different widget, on the second widget. And now we're zooming in into Santiago. We have this marker. So now let's include another branch reusing this code. Let's go to pages. You can click here or just go back and create a new page. Make sure that you select the widget page and create a new one. For example, let's pretend that we're creating a new branch in Toronto. So Toronto branch, click on create. And I already have information for this. So include the header, click on header, click on branches, and let's go header. And here we can modify the information. If you notice here, we have the customized variables. And if we click here, we can modify the default information. Now let's change it to Toronto. Canada. Save it. Now let's go to branches to modify the map and repeat the process here on the city, change it to Toronto, Canada. And on latitude, I already have this. So I will include this. And for the longitude, I have already this value, and save it. And let's see a new version of the same widget, but now using information with Liquid. And if you notice, we already have this map center in Toronto. So this way you can use widgets using the widget builder, the Liquid language, and interacting with CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. My name is Carlos, and I hope that you enjoyed this session. We will see you in another video.